Welcome to the run-through video of the first additional science past paper. I just wanted to tell you before we start that the 6-mark questions in this paper won't be covered in this video. That's just because there are too many marking points and too many things that might need explaining for me to go over it in a video that you might want to ask questions about afterwards. So the 6-mark questions will not be marked in this video, but after you've watched this video, the teacher that's in there with you will give you the mark scheme for those 6-mark questions for you to mark yourself afterwards. Just wanted to remind you that in the physics part of this paper that there are lots of equations at the front of the paper to help you. Okay, so I might refer to this page a bit later on. So the first question says, look at the picture of bull sperm cells. Bull sperm cells contain a different number of chromosomes to the number in body cells. Bull skin cells contain 60 chromosomes. What is the haploid number of chromosomes for a bull? So the haploid number is always half the number of chromosomes. So that is 30. So give yourself a mark if you got 30 there. And then the next question. The Holstein breed of cattle has been bred especially for milk production. Many Holstein cattle frequently suffer lameness and diarrhea. This is because of the way they are bred. Explain why the method of breeding can increase the risk of lameness and diarrhea. So the first mark is for saying that this is selective breeding. So if you've mentioned that this is known as selective breeding, then that gets you 1 mark. The second mark is then linking that to the fact that this can then that leads to interbreeding. So if you've made the connection between the fact it's selective breeding, it leads to interbreeding. That's your second mark. And then you've got to get the idea that lameness or diarrhea is genetically controlled. So there's your 3 marking points. Next question says, cattle can also be cloned for increased milk production. Cloning animals is more difficult than cloning plants. Explain why. And there's a key word you must make sure you get into this answer, and that is differentiate. So you can either say that animal cells lose the ability to differentiate, or we can say plant cells retain or keep the ability to differentiate, but you must make sure you use the word differentiate in your answer. So remember that animal cells lose that ability to differentiate, and plant cells keep it. They keep the ability to differentiate. You could say also that plants retain stem cells, but animals do not. The next question says, cloning is possible because of pioneering scientific research. Scientists now understand a lot about how cells are controlled. This is due to work done by several scientists. Read the following information about some scientific work, so hopefully you've studied that. And it says, explain the advantages of using teams of scientists to investigate scientific problems. So there's a number of points you could make here, and obviously you've got to make 3 of them. Always look at the number of marks available for a question. So you could have said that other scientists can build upon their results, so they can develop their ideas quicker. Now that'll get you 2 marks, 1 for saying other scientists can build upon their results, and 1 for saying that their ideas that can then develop quicker. You could also say that other scientists can repeat or test the work. You could say that different teams have different skills or different resources or different ideas or different approaches, or you could say that they could bounce ideas off each other. You could say that a broad range of evidence can be put together to develop the idea, or you could say that they could gather more evidence to justify the ideas. So any one of those 5 points you could have made, but you need to make 3 of them obviously to get the 3 marks. Next question says, scientists have discovered a new cell. They need to decide if the new cell is an animal, plant or bacterial cell. Look at the diagram. And it says, use a diagram to decide whether the cell is a plant, animal or bacterial. So firstly, the cell is bacterial. And there's a couple of reasons why you'd be able to spot that. The first reason is that it has no nucleus. So what you'd have to say here, firstly, you get a mark for saying that the cell is a bacterial cell. And then you can say that it has no nucleus, or the animal and plant cells have a nucleus. But if you just put it has no nucleus, you get the second mark. Or you can say it has flagellum, or you could say it has a tail. That would be enough. You could also say that it has circular DNA or a single chromosome. So 1 mark for bacterial and 1 mark for either no nucleus or it has a flagellum. And then the next question says, cell division occurs during growth. Write down the name of the type of cell division used for growth, and that is mitosis. So you've got 2 options there, and it's mitosis that you need to put in there. And then it says, explain why DNA replicates before cells divide. And so to get the mark here, you must refer to the new cell that is produced after the division. So you have to say that something like, it makes a copy of the chromosome, so there are 2 new copies, 1 for each new cell. Or rather 1 for each cell. Obviously one of them is new and one of them is the starting one. So it makes a copy of the chromosomes, there are 2 new copies, 1 for each cell, and that will get you that mark. Next question says, Carl's an athlete, he competes in a 200-metre sprint. Muscle contraction during the sprint needs energy. Aerobic respiration is a process that occurs in living cells. Complete the symbol equation for aerobic respiration. So this is an equation you need to know, and I'm going to write it in for you. So you've got glucose, which is C6H12O6, and in aerobic respiration that reacts with oxygen, and you make carbon dioxide and water. And to balance that, you need 6 oxygens, 6 carbon dioxides, and 6 waters. So you get 1 mark if you got the right symbols, and you get another mark for the 3 6s for balancing. So you see there's 2 marks for that one. The circulatory system has parts that help transport substance around the body. Arteries are part of the circulatory system. How do arteries help transport substances around the body? And you've got to tick particular box for the next statement. So the right one is the second one. Arteries carry blood at high pressure away from the heart. Next question. Look at the table data. It shows the maximum oxygen consumption for males at different fitness levels. The males are aged between 13 and 29 years old. So it says Carl is 25 years old. He has a maximum oxygen consumption of 44 centimeters cubed per kilogram per minute. Carl wants to improve his fitness level to excellent. Look at the table, calculate Carl's maximum oxygen consumption as a percentage of the lowest excellent value. So percentage is basically the actual value over the value you're comparing it to over 100. So the lowest excellent value is 47. So you're going to do 44, which is his maximum oxygen consumption, divided by 47, which is the amount he's trying to get to, times 100 to convert into percentage. And that is 93.6. Next question. Carl needs to exercise to further improve his fitness level. Look at the exercise target zone chart. There it is. Have a look. And it says Carl's heart rate reaches 180 beats per minute during exercise. Is Carl training efficiently? And then justify your answer. Now, firstly, you must say no. But that doesn't get you a mark. It's the justifying your answer which gets you a mark. So the first mark is for making the point that he's not within the target heart rate zone. So if he's 180 beats per minute, he's here, which is, he's 29, isn't he? So he's here, which is not in this target heart rate zone, so he's not training efficiently. So if you said that he's in the 85 to 100% max heart rate zone, or he's respiring anaerobically, or you said he is not within the target heart rate zone, or his heart rate puts him in the anaerobic threshold zone, that's the first mark. The second mark is for saying that he then builds up lactic acid, or he builds up an oxygen debt. That would be a second mark. And then the third mark would be for saying so it causes fatigue or cramp or pain. So 3 marks there. First mark for making the point he's in this zone or not in this zone. Second mark for saying that that therefore builds up lactic acid or it builds up an oxygen debt. And the third mark for saying that it therefore causes fatigue or cramp or pain. So on to the chemistry section now. So it says pharmaceutical drugs or medicines are specialty chemicals. Pharmaceutical drugs are often made by batch processes rather than continuous processes. Explain why. So this is all about the fact that pharmaceutical drugs may be wanted on demand, so you get a mark for that. Or you could say that pharmaceutical drugs are not wanted all the year round. Or you could say only small amounts of pharmaceutical drugs are needed. Or you could say you can make a range of drugs and not just one drug. So any one of those 4 points would be fine. Then it says, pharmaceutical drugs often cost a lot of money to make and develop. One reason is that it takes many years to research and test a new drug. Explain 2 other reasons why it's expensive to make and develop a new drug. So again, any 2 of the following. So you could say that it's more labour intensive, or you can say you need a larger workforce. Or you could say you need to have specialised workers, or you need to have a trained personnel or trained workers, or you could say you have to employ scientists. You could say that you need rare raw materials, or starting materials are difficult to get hold of. You could say that less automation is possible, or you could say there's the legal demands, or the cost of patents, or you could say that you have to have sterile conditions, or you need to have a high purity product produced. You could also give the idea that you need to do lots of marketing, but you can't say advertising. You have to say marketing. So any one of those, or any 2 of those points rather, will get you those 2 marks. But if you got 1 point, obviously that'll get you 1 mark. And then pharmaceutical drugs need to be tested to make sure they are safe to use. The research and testing of pharmaceutical drugs may include animal testing and testing on human volunteers. The ideas and views of people in society affect the work of scientists, suggest how the ideas and views of people in society have changed the way the scientists research and test pharmaceutical drugs. So again, 2 marks, so any 2 of these points. You could say that animal rights protesters may make scientists not use animal testing, or you could say that people believe that testing of drugs on animals is cruel. So you got that idea of cruelty in there, that'll get you a mark. You could say that testing on animals is now banned or is limited by law, that'll get another mark. You could say that other scientists have invented testing methods rather than invented other testing methods that don't use animals. Or you could say that there's a risk of bad publicity from accidents to human volunteers. So you could talk about the bad publicity for this second point. If you'd said something about moral or religious objection, or that'll get you a mark. You could say that people think testing on people will ensure drug is safe. You could allow computer modelling for a mark. You could say that people do not trust animal testing, or that testing on animals may not have the same effect on people, or as on people, because they are different. Or you could say that it's too dangerous to test on people. So any 2 of any of those points will get you those 2 marks. So next question, petrol is a mixture of hydrocarbons. David investigates the energy release when 5 of these hydrocarbons are burned. Look at the apparatus he uses. There it is. It says each time he burns 0.5 grams of hydrocarbon and heats 100 grams of water. David measures the temperature of the water before heating. He measures the temperature again when the hydrocarbon has finished burning. So there's the results. So they want the energy release per gram by hexane. So they've given you the equation here, that's quite useful, but you need to remember that the mass is the mass of water heated, and that was 100 grams. So you've got the mass, which is 100 grams, you've got the specific heat capacity, which they're given to you, which is 4.2, and you've got to times that by the temperature change. Now it started at 20, and it went up to 40 for hexane, so that's a temperature change of 20. And so that is that equals 8,400, and then he burnt half a gram of it. So you need to divide 8,400 by the number of grams actually burnt, so that's 0.5. So that will give you 16,800 joules per gram. And then the next question says, David knows that the bigger the hydrocarbon molecule, the more atoms it has. The more carbon atoms it has, sorry. David concludes that the bigger the hydrocarbon molecule, the more energy per gram is released. Explain whether David's results fully support this conclusion. Now here there's only a mark for the explanation. There's no mark for your answer, if you like. So you could say that yes, because as the molecular size increases, the temperature change increases. That's 1 mark, and then you have to say for the second mark that the result for decane is anomalous, or is an anomaly. Or you could say no, because although as the molecular size increases, the temperature change increases, the result for decane does not fit the pattern. So you could either say yes and talk about the molecular size increasing and temperature change increasing for 1 mark, and then saying that decane must be an anomaly, or no, saying that even though the molecular size increases, the temperature change increases, the result for decane doesn't fit the pattern, so you can't say that the results support the conclusion. This next question asks you to work out the atom economy for this reaction here. Now remember, the atom economy is, the formula for it is the formula mass of the desired product over formula mass of all products. So it tells you here that the desired product is hydrogen peroxide, and barium sulfate is the waste product. So you want the mass of hydrogen peroxide on the top, so that's 34, divided by the masses of both hydrogen peroxide and the barium sulfate, which is 233, and then times that by 100, and that gives you 12.7. But you must make sure you write out this because they've obviously given you that the answer is 12.7. Then it says a factory makes 18 tonnes of hydrogen peroxide. Phil predicts the factory should make 20 tonnes of hydrogen peroxide. Calculate the percentage yield. So percentage yield is the actual yield over predicted yield times 100. So that equals 18 divided by 20 times 100. So that equals 90%. And the manufacture of hydrogen peroxide from barium peroxide is not sustainable. Explain why. And that's because the atom economy is too low. If the atom economy is that low, then this is not a sustainable reaction. So next question is about diamond. There's a structure of diamond. And it says diamond has a very high melting point. Explain why. So the first thing is for saying that it has many strong bonds. So it has many strong bonds. You could say that it has many covalent bonds between the atoms, but you must say it has many strong bonds between atoms. And then you've got to say that therefore that takes a lot of energy to break the bonds. So first mark is for this bit, and then for the second mark for saying that therefore it takes a lot of energy to break the bonds. And it says diamond does not conduct electricity. Explain why. If it ever asks you why something doesn't conduct electricity, you can say that it doesn't have free electrons. And that'll get you the mark. Next question is to write a balanced symbol equation for the reaction this explains here. So it says magnesium reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid, magnesium chloride and hydrogen are made. There's 2 marks here. The first mark is for writing out the symbols. So it says magnesium reacts. So magnesium is a reactant and HCl is a reactant, hydrochloric acid, and it tells you that magnesium chloride and hydrogen are made. Now you've got to know the formula for magnesium chloride, so that's MgCl2. You've got to make sure that the first letters look like capitals and the second letters are lowercase in your symbols. And then you've just got to balance it for the second mark. So to balance it you need 2 HCl. So 1 mark for the symbols in the right places and 1 mark for that balancing. And then next question says they time how long it takes all magnesium to react. The reaction time. There's the results. It says look at the results for experiment B. Calculate the mean rate of reaction in experiment B. Give your answer to 3 significant figures. So the first thing to do is to compare the reaction time to the others. So the reaction time for experiment B is half the reaction time for experiment A. So therefore the rate of reaction is going to be doubled. So this is going to be 8.3 times 10 to the minus 4 times 2, which equals 1.67 times 10 to the minus 3 to 3 significant figures. You could also put 0.00167 if you wanted to, or you could put 16.7 times 10 to the minus 4. But you've got to make sure it's only to 3 significant figures. So basically the first non-zero number that you come across is the first significant figure, then every number afterwards is another significant figure. So no, 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 yes, 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 that's 3 significant figures. Now finally we're on to the physics section. So it says Laura and Paul are learning about speed and distance in a science lesson. Paul walks around the school sports field. Laura calculates the speed for different parts of his walk. She draws a speed time graph. So there's a speed time graph. It says Laura thinks that Paul accelerates in part A but decelerates in part C. Then decelerates more rapidly in part D. Is Laura correct? So firstly, Laura is correct, but you don't get a mark for that. So the marks are for saying first A has a positive gradient or a positive slope, but C and D are negative gradients of slopes. That's talking about accelerating here, but decelerating here. So talk about that this has a positive gradient, but this is negative. You could also say that line A is going up and line C is going down. That would also get you that mark. And then for the second mark, you need to compare these two lines. And so you just got to say that D is steeper than C, or C is shallower than D, and that will get you the second mark. So then it asks you to calculate the distance travelled while Paul's speed is increasing. So the distance travelled is the area underneath the speed time graph. So while the only section A is Paul's speed is only increasing in section A, and it's put on there that he gets up to 2.5 meters per second, and it takes him 40 seconds. So basically, because it's a triangle, you're going to do 2.5 times 40 divided by 2. So that equals 50. So you need to put a ring around 50 meters. Then it says Paul walks a total distance of 540 meters. His average speed for the whole walk is 1.8 meters per second. He does a longer walk of 1.2 kilometers, the same average speed, and calculate the time for his longer walk. So remember I said that there will be equations at the front of the booklet, and there's an equation for this. This is distance, the distance, time, and speed equation. So basically, distance equals speed times time. Now, here it asks you to work out a time. So that's going to be distance over speed. So the distance is 1.2 kilometers, but the speed's in meters per second. So you've got to convert that first into meters. So it's going to be 1200, because kilometers into meters is times by 1000. Divide that by 1.8, which is his speed, which gives you 666.66 recurring, but it asks you for its answer to three significant figures. So these first numbers are significant figures, but the number afterwards is above a 5, so you round that 6 up. So the answer is 667 to three significant figures, and that will get you that second mark. Next question gives you some data about a car that is driving with different distances and gives you the fuel consumption. It asks you to calculate the mean fuel consumption for the car from these results. So that's just adding together all these numbers and dividing by how many numbers there are. So if you add all these numbers together, you get 90, and there's 6 numbers, so therefore the answer, the mean, is 15 kilometers per litre. Then it says, look at the fuel consumption data in the table. One of the test drives produced a value well below the mean compared to the others. This is partly due to drag. Which driver is this? And choose one of those. Now car C has the lowest fuel consumption, so that's the one that's going to have the most drag. So car C, but that doesn't get you a mark. You've got to identify what causes the increased drag and explain how this and other factors lead to the poor fuel consumption. So there are 3 marks here, so you've got to make 3 factors. So you've got to say either because the window is open, or you've got the roof box causing increased drag. That's your first mark. And then if you link that to the idea of more kinetic energy needed, or the engine have to do more work, or the engine has to work harder, that's a second mark. And then you've got one more mark for the additional factors. So you could say that a higher speed would cause a higher fuel consumption, or changing speed a lot, or accelerating more. You could say different driving styles, or frequent braking, or electrical equipment in use like the radio or the fog lights. Or you could say there's a different terrain or road surface would give you a higher fuel consumption as well. You could give examples like you could drive on hills and get a higher fuel consumption, or driven over roads with poor grip and you get a higher fuel consumption. So 3 marks there, one for saying why the fuel consumption here is lower, and that's because the roof box is on, or you could say because the car windows are open, which causes more drag. Then link that to more kinetic energy, or more energy needed, or the engine having to work hard, and then give another factor for the 3rd mark, which would also decrease fuel consumption. So higher speed, different driving styles, different terrain or road surface. So next question says, Trevor wants to buy a new car. The salesperson at his local garage gives him a brochure with information about some cars. He looks at the information about 5 cars, and there they are. So there's the information. So it says, Trevor wants to buy the car that is most economical and does the least harm to the environment. He talks to the salesperson. Now Trevor says, car X is the best fuel consumption and is quiet, and I like the performance figures for car V. But the salesperson says, I don't think either car is the best one for you. You're misinterpreting some information. I would suggest car. So explain how Trevor has misinterpreted information and suggest with reasons which car he should buy to meet his requirements. So So first let's explain how Trevor has misinterpreted information. So he's misinterpreted information because he's misread the fuel consumption. So a low fuel consumption is bad. So you first need to say that Z is most economical because Z has the highest fuel consumption in kilometres per litre. So basically you can drive more kilometres before a litre of fuel is used up. So the first mark is saying that Z is the most economical, the most fuel efficient, or the best fuel consumption, or has the lowest fuel costs. And then the second mark is saying that Trevor has read the fuel consumption data the wrong way around, or back to front, or saying that X is the worst fuel consumption, or 16.1 is the worst fuel consumption. The second mark is then for suggesting a different one, so you could say that you could suggest Y, because Y is the quietest and gives out less noise pollution, or you could say that Z is close to Y in terms of low noise pollution, and it's close to Y in terms of the carbon dioxide. So you could suggest either Y or Z as the different car. So first mark was saying why Trevor is incorrect, because he's read the data the wrong way around, and actually Z is the most economical. And then the third mark for suggesting a new car, so either Y or Z, for saying that Y has a lower noise level than Z, and therefore that might be the better car to go for. So the next question asks you to calculate something. Now remember, when we need to calculate something, we look at the front of our paper first to look if there's any equations that will help us. And there is. Firstly, we know that, or we can read from our list of equations, that power equals work done divided by time, and that work done equals force times distance. So first work out the work done. That's going to equal 500 times 850, so that equals 425,000, and then power is going to be 425,000 over time, which is 35, and that equals 12,142. Now that's in watts. To put it into kilowatts, or the nearest kilowatt, that's going to be 12 kilowatts. And it says this represents the highest power of all the 5 cars. Use the information in the table to explain which car Trevor test drove. Assume the mass of each car increases with engine size. Now notice that the question says to explain, so you can't just choose the car, you have to explain which car Trevor test drove. So it's car V, and your explanation is because it has the biggest engine size, or we could say car V because it has the highest top speed, or you could say car V because it has the highest acceleration. So you first have to say car V, but to get the mark you have to say it has the biggest engine size, or highest top speed, or the highest acceleration. So next question says, Trevor's friend John lives in the centre of a city. John is considering buying an electric vehicle to drive on the inner city roads. Look at the 2 examples of electric vehicles. So there's the 2 examples. One is, it says electric powered vehicles could increasingly replace petrol-driven cars. To discuss the implications for drivers and pedestrians. So there's 2 marks here, so there'll be 1 mark for discussing the implication for drivers and 1 for pedestrians. So for driver, you can have any one from the fact you have to need to recharge the battery, or you need a charging point. There's a limited range of the car. There's a limited top speed, or there's lower performance. You could say there's no pollution, or there's no harmful gases given out. You could say it's more economical to run, or you could say that there could be no congestion charge in London. For pedestrians, you choose or have any one of these. There's dangers from more vehicles on the roads or in city centres. There's the accident danger is increased because the cars are quiet and they're difficult to hear, or you could just say they're difficult to hear. And then the good points is that there's the idea of less noise pollution. Again, no pollution or harmful gases, and danger from vehicle on pavement if the scooter or Segway is named. So if you talked about this one, you could say that there's danger if that's going to be driven on the pavement. Now you've got to make sure that you link it to the right one. So you need to say the driver needs to recharge the battery, or the driver has a limited range, or the driver has a limited top speed, or the driver it's more economical to run for the driver, and that there's a danger to pedestrians for vehicles on roads. Or it's good for pedestrians if there's less noise pollution. So you must make sure you link your answer to the correct one. So next question, Molly is investigating falling objects in a science lesson. She drops a thin piece of card from the top of the staircase and measures the time it takes to fall to the floor. She then changes its shape and repeats the test. Look at Molly's results. the results. So it says put a tick in the box beside each correct statement. So the first correct statement is that the weight of each sheet equals the drag force when they fall at terminal speed. The next correct statement is drag on A is bigger than drag on B, which is bigger than drag on C when falling. And the last statement is another correct one. At terminal speed, the loss of GP increases the thermal energy of the surrounding air particles. If you got all three of those, that's 2 marks. But if you got either one or two of them correct, that's 1 mark. But if you ticked more than 3 of the boxes, you would lose a mark for each tick over the 3 you're supposed to tick. So if you ticked 4 of these boxes but got those 3 in those 4, then you'd only get 1 mark because you ticked 1 more than you should have done. So that's the end of the paper. So make sure you get the next paper from your teacher that's in there with you, and they'll also give you the mark schemes for the 6 mark questions for you to mark yourself from those.